The growing list of attacks, both shocking and part of a widening trend of agents tasked with enforcing immigration law targeted.
DHS unleashed massive armored units after domestic extremists stormed an ICE compound outside Chicago.
Operation At Large Chicago is underway with many arrests already being made.
At first, it looked like another late-night protest outside the ICE processing center with chants, signs, and flashing lights under the overpass. But then, it shifted. Within minutes, the crowd surged past the front barriers. Officers were hit with tear gas canisters. Tires were slashed. Federal agents radioed for backup, and no one came. To anyone nearby, it looked like a spontaneous riot. But federal officials now say this wasn't random. It was part of a coordinated campaign of attacks on immigration facilities across the country, the kind of violence the FBI and DHS have quietly been warning about for months. And when armored DHS units finally rolled in before dawn, the Broadview Processing Center had already become the flashpoint of a national security crisis, a symbol of the war brewing between federal enforcement and domestic extremist groups targeting it. In this video, we're going inside the Broadview assault, how it started, who organized it, and why it forced DHS to deploy armored units on U.S. soil.
We're not going to war. We're going to clean up our cities. We're going to clean them up so they don't kill 5 people every weekend. That's not war. That's common sense.
We'll trace the surge of violence against ICE officers, the intelligence memos that predicted it, and the political firestorm now tearing through Illinois. According to DHS officials, what happened in Illinois was not an isolated riot. It was the latest flashpoint in a nationwide surge of attacks on immigration enforcement. Between January and June of this year, assaults on ICE and DHS agents jumped tripled compared to the same period last year.
The growing list of attacks, both shocking and part of a widening trend of agents tasked with enforcing immigration law targeted, up nearly 700% from this time last year.
DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin told reporters the real number could be higher, warning that dangerous rhetoric by sanctuary politicians has fanned the flames of violence.
When the rhetoric was rising, it said that this rhetoric doesn't slow down, someone's going to die. And the left went crazy that I would say something like that. Well, they have. Unfortunately, I was right.
And Tom Haman was right. In California, a suspect threw a Molotov cocktail at a hotel housing ICE and CBP agents, putting not just the lives of the agents in danger, but the lives of the many innocent people just going about their days. In Minnesota, an ICE officer was dragged nearly 50 yards by a fleeing suspect. And in Nebraska, a Venezuelan national tied to the Tren de Aragua gang allegedly attacked a federal agent during an arrest. Each case, investigators say, points to a chilling trend that's been forming underground for years now. Organized resistance against federal immigration operations. The administration has responded with a massive enforcement expansion, a proposed $350 billion national security bill, 10,000 new ICE officers, and a promise to fight back harder than ever.
What we're looking for are immigration violators, folks that have violated our immigration laws, those vile criminals that harm thousands of American citizens each year.
This is an opportunity for us to go into sanctuary cities and work against these sanctuary city policies and not let them deter ICE from being able to do our work, to go after the worst of the worst.
But that surge in enforcement may also be fueling the backlash, because as violence escalates, intelligence reports are warning domestic extremists are now coordinating pre-planned attacks on ICE facilities nationwide. And that's where this story turns, from statistics to strategy. With the increased presence ICE has all over the country, federal analysts already predicted violence against federal officials would rise. And inside Washington, people who needed to know were immediately put on notice. And it wasn't just Washington that was put on notice. A joint DHS-FBI bulletin was circulated to law enforcement nationwide, warned of domestic violent extremists planning and carrying out attacks on ICE facilities in at least 3 states.
The bulletin says many of the threats are posted online. It calls for authorities to be vigilant and be aware of activity involving violent domestic extremists.
The memo said these incidents marked a new phase of organized violence, Because while part of a law enforcement job is the risk of attack from either suspects of investigations or random crazed people looking to make a statement, analysts had noticed a spike in the kind of violence against law enforcement. It started from simple vandalism, but lately, it climbed into targeted assaults on personnel.
The bulletin mentions last week's incident in which a man attacked a Cincinnati FBI field office and was later killed in a confrontation with police.
In Dallas, 29-year-old Joshua John fired from a rooftop into ICE transport vehicles, killing 2 detainees before taking his own life. Days later, outside Prairieland Detention Center, another gunman opened fire on local police during a July 4th crowd. 20 suspects were later arrested. Investigators say this group was more sophisticated, and the attack didn't seem random.
This was an egregious attack on federal and local law enforcement officers. It was a planned ambush with the intent to kill ICE corrections officers.
How did they know it wasn't just random? They took a closer look at the details of the attack. For one, they all came straight for the facility, and they used encrypted apps and safe houses to plan. That was one of the things that led federal agents straight to them. That and all the gear they found on the property.
There was an AR-style rifle found at the scene.
Deputies stopped 7 suspects nearby. Investigators saying they found body armor, weapons, and radios. Inside the vehicle, a flag that said "Fight ICE Terror." It's unclear if this incident is connected to a shooting in McAllen, where an armed man was killed after exchanging gunfire at a Border Patrol facility.
Analysts eventually linked these operations through shared digital footprints, the same channels that had been monitored, leading up to what we now know as the Broadview violence. At the time, the bulletin urged state and local agencies to remain vigilant and warned that more attacks could emerge out of nowhere, but especially from otherwise lawful protests. Behind closed doors, officials began classifying the Broadview breach as part of a pattern: coordinated, multi-state, and rapidly evolving. And for DHS, that meant one thing: prepare for the next hit before it happens. Just after midnight, on September 19th, 2025, a crowd of roughly 100 protesters gathered outside the ICE Broadview Processing Center. With most protests, they tend to start out slow and don't escalate until much later. But this one was different.
Tensions continue to rise at the ICE processing facility in Broadview as protesters clash with federal agents.
It turned violent within minutes of the protests starting. Tear gas canisters were thrown, not by police, but by the crowd itself. Tires were slashed. Vans used by ICE officers were set on fire. But the worst part, the agents faced all of that heavy fire with no backup. According to DHS officials, multiple calls for assistance from local calls went unanswered. Police under Governor J.B. Pritzker's sanctuary jurisdiction reportedly refused to engage, citing their non-intervention policy guidelines.
No units will respond to this. Multiple police sources have confirmed to us the message is authentic and it is backed up by audio of the stand-down order.
They were saying that they were being surrounded by that large crowd and they were requesting the police were not sending. I'm waving off all the cars heading to 39th Place in Cassie.
Inside the compound, federal agents swarmed by hundreds of protesters at once struggled to seal off the holding area. Barricading the hallways was even much harder as rioters pushed through the outer gate. By 3:47 a.m., DHS had no choice but to deploy armored tactical units to re-establish control, but they didn't do it alone. By dawn, dozens of violent protesters had been taken off the streets.
Several hundred law enforcement agents and officers are in Chicago right now. You're going to see those numbers rise.
But you know who still got backlash after all that? Not the local cops who refused to help their fellow brothers in arms. DHS, Governor of Illinois, Governor J.B. Pritzker, and Mayor of the city Brandon Johnson both condemned DHS for what they called excessive force, even as agents reported multiple injuries.
Are made to feel unsafe by the jackbooted thugs roaming around a peaceful downtown.
But top officials from the DHS say it is exactly that kind of rhetoric that makes agents a target. DHS Assistant Director Tracy McLaughlin said, "Sanctuary politicians are siding with criminals over victims." The Broadview compound was secured by sunrise, but the images left behind. For DHS, this wasn't just crowd control, it was battlefield control on home soil. Less than 24 hours after the Broadview riot, the focus shifted from curbing the protests on the streets to ending it in a courtroom. U.S. District Judge Sarah Ellis issued an emergency ruling that all ICE and Border Patrol agents operating in Illinois must wear body cameras, effective immediately.
They are laughing as they pepper us with rubber bullets, with pepper balls. They are laughing, they are pointing, they are making a game of it.
The decision followed viral footage showing tear gas deployed on demonstrators earlier in the week, a direct violation of her previous order banning certain crowd control tactics. Ellis said she was profoundly concerned. Federal officers had ignored her ruling and ordered ICE's Chicago field director to appear in court.
This confrontation between federal immigration agents and people in Chicago's southeast side this week is among the incidents that prompted U.S. District Judge Sarah Ellis to say she wants agents to start wearing body cameras.
DHS attorneys pushed back, warning the order was logistically impossible during an ongoing enforcement surge. According to DHS, not all agents were equipped with body cameras, and the federal budget freeze had stalled new procurement. The ruling placed ICE agents in an impossible position, expected to contain violent assaults while operating under expanded surveillance and political scrutiny.
That would be a, quote, extreme act of judicial activism.
On the other hand, the Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker praised the decision, calling it a necessary check on unrestrained federal power. He accused DHS of escalating tension instead of preventing it.
I think the judge reacted to that properly by ordering that now the federal agents are required to have body cameras on them because they clearly lie.
Inside ICE's Chicago field office, morale hit a low point. Agents now faced rising street assaults, a federal inquiry into their tactics, and new compliance protocols rolled out overnight. Every encounter became potential evidence, every use of force a possible court exhibit. National media split instantly, one side praising oversight, the other accusing the judiciary of crippling law enforcement. For ICE, their priority was to protect their officers. They didn't have a problem with accountability, but not at the expense of their colleagues' lives.
It's intense. They got guys up there pointing guns. They got guys coming out with batons. They got these guys over here.
For ICE leadership, the Broadview riot had already changed policy. But in Washington, it was changing something bigger: how far the courts could reach into frontline enforcement. The line between justice and jurisdiction had never been thinner. Inside the Department of Homeland Security's Counterintelligence Division, the tone shifted from reacting to the attacks as they came to preventing the attacks altogether. And to do that, they had a plan. After Broadview, federal investigators began tracing the digital fingerprints of the groups behind the unrest, encrypted forums, burner accounts, and cross-state logistics. DHS analysts say many of the same accounts used to coordinate the Prairieland and Dallas attacks were active in Illinois weeks before the riot. Inside DHS's Office of Intelligence and Analysis, analysts began categorizing the groups responsible under 3 threat brackets. Category 1, Organized Domestic Violent Extremists, DVES. These are usually small disciplined cells using encrypted apps and VPN layers to coordinate attacks on ICE and federal infrastructure. Many of these cells draw tactics from prior anarchist and anti-federal demonstrations, surveillance mapping, convoy blocking, and swarm retreats. In the second category are the opportunistic agitators. These are usually participants embedded within legitimate protests, not ideologically rigid, but mobilized by viral misinformation or outrage cycles. These are often the first on scene, the last to leave, and the easiest to overlook. In Category 3, they put hybrid criminal networks, groups blending ideological motives with organized crime. These are the groups with suspected links to foreign or transnational gangs, like Tren de Aragua, CJNG, and the Sinaloa cartel. and they use protests as cover for smuggling, recruitment, or sabotage. By late October, DHS fusion centers in Chicago, Dallas, and Portland were sharing live intelligence streams with the FBI's Counterterrorism Division and the National Counterterrorism Center. The mission profile was to detect pre-operational planning before it hits the streets. According to internal summaries reviewed by oversight committees, Broadview also triggered the creation of a new federal working term, Tier 2, Domestic Repression Threat Clusters. These describe semi-organized US-based actors capable of multi-state disruption without direct foreign direction. With the classifications and the information loop, finding these violent protesters became a lot easier. The operation that followed, codenamed Midway Blitz, led to hundreds of arrests, including suspected Tren de Aragua affiliates and individuals accused of aiding the Broadview breach.
Trying great success here in Chicagoland. Over the past week alone, several hundred arrests. Those arrests are by ICE, who leads Operation Midway Blitz.
But behind the arrests lies a deeper question: whether the U.S. is sliding into a new kind of domestic standoff, citizens versus state, ideology versus enforcement. For the men and women on the ground, the line between policing and warfare blended into each other. The Broadview riot may have ended before sunrise, but its impact hasn't faded. Because the question now isn't whether there will be another attack, it's where and how soon. This story isn't over. Federal analysts are still tracking Tier 2 threat clusters tied to the same encrypted channels that surfaced before Broadview. And if those signals light up again, we'll be there to break it down first. If you found this report valuable, subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next time armored units roll out on US soil, you'll want to know why.